Hello there. So finally we're on to part 3, where we're going to bring this Snowball head. So at the moment it's a female character. Whoops. So we're going to append that into the male clothing file and set the project up for the male avatar. So for that we are going to need, let's just minimize this, another instance of Blender. We need to append in the male clothing file, which is male clothing file alternative. So that's the clothing file. It's pretty much exactly the same as the female one, except obviously for the male avatar they use the same skeleton, but as we'll see when we append the head, there'll be differences in the neck and the shoulders area that we have to accommodate. So to append our head, file, append, this will open up the file list where we need to find our file. What did we call it? Snowball. Snowball 12, because that's the final version. So if we double click on this entry, it treats the file as an archive, like a zip or RAR file. So double click and we enter into, let's switch the icons, we enter into the file and we can see the contents of the file, or the blend file. And what we want is object folder. Double click, and now we have to find the head. So we want Snowball. Did we join everything together? That's one thing we need to make sure that we've done. So yes, everything is joined together, so we've got all our materials. It's just a single mesh. Snowball 2 mesh. So we should have Snowball, that's the original, so we want this one. So select. And we want to, no, that's okay. So leave the defaults as they are. But we have to be careful that, so we'll select that and append it. So it's brought that in, but we have to be mindful that it's brought in a second instance of the armature that's associated, well, it's brought in the female armature, even though they're both called the same thing, female 03 master root, but it's brought in a duplicate of that, so we can get rid of that because we do not need it and it will cause problems later on. So select and just delete. So we can see that we do have our neck issues. So all we need to do now is side view, selection, go to roughly position the head where it needs to be. That's pretty much where it needs to be. Front. That's okay. So what we have to do here then, two things. First, we want to make sure that the armature deforms the mesh. So this is why we're using the clothing file, because the head occupies more than just the head bone and includes potentially the neck bones and, depending on your item, maybe the collarbones and top spine. So that's spine 04. We can't do this kind of product with the accessory file because we can only attach our meshes to a single bone. So for the accessory file, there's a bone here which is associated with the entire mesh, but we can only use that one bone for the accessory because of the way that they work in IMVU. So for this, we just need to make sure that, so modifiers, we need to check the armature. It hasn't got an object associated with it, so picker, mouse over the armature, select, and it drops it in as the object that's controlling it. So we can select the skeleton, pose mode, and we should have select a bone. That controls the head. And we can control, well, not control, we can test the neck bones relative to the neck as it already is, which is for the female neck. But what we need to do, so back out of, so let's just hide the head for the moment. Hide the male head, male hair. So to get this to work, we can use the avatar. So select the mesh, edit mode, and what we're going to do, let's switch to solid so it's easy to see. Face select, all we're going to do is select the faces of the neck. Let's hide the skeleton for the moment because that is distracting. So that's all we need. We're going to duplicate that. Let's just double check. So mesh, duplicate. So we've created our duplicate. We've created our duplicate. Press escape just to reset. And we want to detach this. So mesh, separate, selection. That detaches that into its own object, object mode, which we can now select. So if we just hide the avatar body, unhide the skeleton, that section of the mesh is still going to be controlled by the armature. So doing this just saves us a lot of fiddling about and work weight painting the mesh to make sure that it works with the armature. So for some sections of your products, depending on what they are for your head products, we can just utilize what we've already got, which is the avatar. So we need to check the UV mapping for this. So I have to reset the view because it always does that. Let's focus on that. Switch to textured view. Back into edit mode. Select all. So that for the avatar, so this is where the UV is for the neck. It's this tiny area down here, but we've got a specific texture for this already set up, and we can use that or utilize that even though it's for the it was originally for the female avatar, we can utilize it for our male avatar. So all we need to do to this is assign, so toggle out of edit mode, we just need to assign the material that should be brought in. There it is, it's neck 1. So when we brought in the mesh, the appended snowball mesh, it's brought in the mesh, the materials, and any texture references at the same time. So it's brought in a copy of that. So you can assign that. And that's gone, that's actually transparent because of the way that the mesh. So what we want to do now then, select all. Can we see where the UVs are? On the head, on the neck texture. Let's have a look at the shading. Hey Albert, you can't. You can't. There isn't a way. It's not translatable. The physics system, or convertible. Where were we? Oh yes. So, taking a look at our shader. So what we're seeing is the transparency. So we've got our material set up. Let's go full screen. Control space. So we've got our material set up, and this is what it's brought in. So we've got our diffuse, which is the red blood texture. We've got our normal map. But we've also now got an opacity map that defines the transparency. So that's the opacity that's plugged into alpha. And this is our standard black and white image. So if we toggle out of that, go into UV editing, we have, that's the opacity mask. So the not the material, the UV map is in the black area, which means it's going to be transparent. So if we just move it, even as it is, so just grab it, and there we can see the red appearing on our object. But what we're going to do is just redo the UV map for this. So edge, just split it down the back. Marker seam, select all, and then just unwrap it. So UV unwrap, and that's going to unwrap it relative to the shape of the mesh. So all we need to do now is do some editing. So we use the tools, plonk that in the middle. So that is going to be the bottom. That's going to be down in that bottom corner. That's going to be in the top corner. So make sure UV snap to pixels is on. We want corner. And this just basically means that the pixels of the image act as an informal grid of sorts. So the UVs snap to pixels. This just makes the alignment of the UVs much better. So what we're going to do next is select those, so shift click, pin them, And this does what it suggests. It's going to lock them in place. So UV pin. And then what we can do is unwrap again. And it unwraps it relative to the image. So I'll just do a bit of tidying up. So pin that. So the shortcut for pin is the letter P. Pin that, unwrap again. And then just straighten up the UVs. So pin those. So we're going to do an Alt loop select. And that selects the entire loop of UV vertices. Pin those. Unwrap again. And that is the blood mapped to the neck. But we could, if we wanted to, play around with this a little bit. Just change the mapping a little bit. But make sure that these two sides are the same. They have to be exactly the same, otherwise we'll get a line where they tile left to right. So we can just check that by pressing the B key, which is box select, or we can use, there it is, box select. And what that does is it brings up this what is that? Crosshairs. And we can just use the crosshair to check our alignment, which is spot on. So that's fine. Press escape. So all we need to do is just play around with the UV map a little bit. Change the mapping. Double check our UVs. That's okay. Perfect. So we can use Blender to, we mentioned this in the previous streams, we can use Blender to preview the way the product will eventually look in IMVU. So we can if we set up our materials correctly, so that we are taking advantage of things like opacity masks and our diffuse. Normal map not so much, because what we're testing here is just the actual transparency of the image. But so long as we have a separate opacity mask, that's our black and white image, as part of our material, we're essentially previewing exactly what this will look like in IMVU. So what we see here is what we'll see in IMVU Studio when we bring this into IMVU. Right, so that's that neck section done. and we could double check that it still deforms the way that we expect it to. Oops, that's the wrong one. So this is the advantage of just using, where we can, the avatar. So if we need a section of the avatar, we might as well just use it. Oh, have we got material, viewport shading? No, it's not there. Where is it? Alpha clip. That's all right. That's weird. Oh, that's interesting. Mental note for later. Make a note of that. So where were we? Oh right, yes, so rename this. Just call this neck. Snowball neck dot mesh. So hide naked torso, bring back Snowball, hide the new neck. What we need to do is get rid of the old neck. So head, and here, don't deselect. What we can do, use the material. So we're in material properties. We can use the material as our selection tool. So if we select the material that we want to select, which is neck, we can use the assign, select, deselect buttons, and that selects just the next section. So we can detach this as junk. We don't need this anymore. Where is it? Separate, selection, detach, object mode, select that and just hide it. Let's just call it junk for now. Let's shove it at the top, out of the way. Ooh, look, so there's a, just need to correct something on the image. Get the source file. I think we might have to do this later. Yeah, I have to do this later. Right, so Snowball neck. Get that back into place. And what we'll need to do now, so we're inside the mesh. Whoops. So this is the neck. Let's just hide the avatar skeleton again. So this is the neck and this is the head. Let's get the wireframe visible. So neck, head. We have to make some adjustments to the head so that it matches up to the neck. We don't want to do it the other way around. We don't want the neck to match up to where the head's been placed, because the alignment is wrong. So as we can see here, so this is the position relative to the female avatar and the way the neck is structured, but this is where it is for the male avatar. And as we pointed out previously, the neck of the male avatar, let's just hide these. The neck of the male avatar is much lower than the female avatar. So if we can hide that, we can see that the female's neck is much longer. It's about twice as long. So the position of the head for the female is relative to that, as opposed to obviously being relative to this. So we now have to make some corrections to the head, not to the neck, because we want the neck to remain untouched largely, so that we keep the mesh deformation in place that we've got by default, because of the way that the avatar mesh is weighted to the skeleton. So we're inside the mesh. What we can do here is neck. Well, actually, no, it'd be better to do it the other way around. So head, then neck. So we're joining the head to the neck mesh. Object, join. So Control J, object, join. That joins them together. So now we can switch to edit mode, vertex select. What we're going to do is snap vertices together. So we're going to snap the head vertices to the neck. So select, so shift click. So that's the head, then the neck. And then what we can do is use snap, excuse me. No, it's not that one, is it? It's merge. Yes, we're going to use merge, not snap. So mesh, merge, and what we can do, depending on your selection order, so we selected the head first and the neck last. We want to snap the head to the neck, so we need to select at last. So merge, at last, and that neck head joint is then formed from that selection. So, but we can reverse the order, so neck first, then head, mesh, merge at first, it does the same thing. So the shortcut for that is the M key, M for Marty. Just go all over on the mesh. And that's literally it. That's all we need to do. So now the head is connected to the neck. But what we might want to do is just make some minor adjustments to the head. So we can actually see that in IMVU. So that's that done. Next step, edge select. We just want to select this edge and mark it as a seam. No, not a seam. Mark it as sharp. So edge, sharp. Whoops. And that creates a hard edge along that loop, which means the shading's better. So just double check that we have. No, we don't. So in other words, if we watch what happens to this area here, it should be darker inside here, but it's not because of the way the mesh folds back on itself. So because the mesh is basically doing this inside here, because this is considered to be part of the same edge flow, Blender and IMVU won't be able to determine that there should be a hard edge there. There should be a very... the hard edge causes the shading, or it should cause the shading to abruptly stop or break at this point, but it doesn't. It just continues around the mesh. So we get these strange disparities where it should be dark in here, but it's actually light. So what we can do with that is add modifier, edge split. That'll create automatic edge splits all over the place based on an angle, but we want to set it to sharp edges. So disable angle, edges marked sharp, and it hasn't done what it's supposed to do, which is a bit odd. So let's just double check. Object, shade smooth. That's odd. Okay, so what that should be doing is breaking this edge. But for some reason it's not. No idea why it's doing that. Mark sharp, clear sharp. Oh, so it is doing something, but it's very... It's not quite as defined as I was expecting it to be. Most strange. But that's the head and neck joined together. So what we can do now is object mode, torso, enable skeletons. Let's double check. So pose mode. So we can see how the neck is deforming with the avatar. But what we might want to do as well, we don't want the neck to be positioned coincidentally, so it's basically occupying the same space as the underlying avatar, so we need to give it a bit of room to breathe. So what we want to do is use the shrink fatten tool. So click hold, we want shrink fatten, and we just want to increase the size of these loops just to give us a bit of space around the avatar. In fact, actually, before we do that, let's save this in case we need to. So undoing all of that, let's just save this, save as. So this is 13. Save as. And then do it. So that way, once, if we make a mistake or we need to make an adjustment, we have the original to go back to. So click, drag, do the same for the other horizontal loops. And for the inside, and if shrink fatten doesn't give us the orientation that we want, we can just use standard scaling. And that should be more than enough. Object mode. So that's more or less what we should see in IMVU. So let's just save this and try and export. So save as 14. And then do a test export. So mesh, skeleton, file, export, FBX. So file, export FBX. Get the usual file dialog, and what we want is selected objects. Everything else is okay. Geometry, that's all right. Armature, always always disable add leaf bones. And there are no animations, so we can disable that. So Snowball 14. Location, that's all right. Export. So, Studio. Let's see if this has worked. Right, so create new project. And we want men, body, all body. Male head. And then derive. Ew. So import FBX, browse to and select, Snowball 14, open, So it's showing us what it's found in the file as a preview. Setup FBX. So scale always 0.01 if you are using the starter file from CatsBits. Select the skeleton. Generally speaking, it's always going to be the one with the lowest number of bones, 86. And we've just got one mesh. So mesh ID, we're replacing the head, so 0. Everything else is okay. Next. So this is why we set up our materials the way that we do. If we have them set up that way, so let's just select the head. If we have the material set up this way so that we have a separate image for the diffuse, for the opacity, and for the normal map, when we import that into Studio, it automatically picks up those different images, so we don't have to do any extra work in terms of assigning these to the material in Studio. It's automatically found them and assigned them. So next, no animation, preview. So that's what it's going to bring in. Import, and it should automatically set, and there it is. So it automatically assembles everything, set up our materials, set up the opacity, and has sorted out the head. Nice. So component, let's have a look at the materials. Unfortunately, if we do use the head, we can't get rid of some of the default assignments, because although we are actually creating a head and we are replacing the default head, we're not also then replacing the eyes. What's that one? Anime. Is that the eyelashes? I think that's the eyelashes, and then the eyebrows. So we haven't replaced these, so it'll keep these in the file. I don't think. Let's just do a create. There isn't. Basically, there isn't an empty head, which is what we would need for doing projects like this. So we have to use the default head under the, and this assumes that we're then going to replace all the materials that are associated with the head, which we might not actually need to be doing, because we might just want to replace a certain aspect of it but get rid of all the other bits, but we can't do that because there's no blank head. There's the male hair, but that's not the same thing. So that is our head, Snowball, on the male avatar. So it's same mesh as for the female, same textures, made the same way. All we've done is appended that into the male avatar file, made some adjustments. So we've copied over the neck element, neck and shoulders, or the upper. Is that the lower neck or the upper neck? So this area, we've copied that, duplicated that, added it to the head mesh, joined them together, and we've used the same weighting. So everything else has been set up in the female file. Everything else was set up in the female file, so we created it originally for the female avatar. So vertex groups, weight painting, material assignments, material setup, all of that sort of stuff, that's set up for the female. And all we've done is, when appending, it's just brought in all that information, and we can use it with some minor modifications, so we don't have to do too much work to get what is it, unisex, essentially, items for the avatars. Export that. Let's do a, whilst we're here, add light point. Where's the light source gone? There it is. So light properties. Need to make this 1,000,000 watts. So 1, 2, 3, 5. Duplicate. So this is a very basic 3-point light setup. Duplicate again, shift that one to the back. Down below, no shadows, no shadows. So get shadows just from this light. Whoops. Let's save this 5, so that's 15. But that is the project completed. So we're previewing in Blender what it'll look like again using some lights. That's with our material set up with normal maps. We don't have shininess. We're just using the standard material settings for that. So specular and roughness in Blender, that's what defines. So we'll see it. Oh, we do have a specular for the face on this one. But how reflective, we can change that. And that again gives us an assessment of what it'll look like in IMVU. Face, so it hasn't brought in the shininess mask, so I have to set that up. Add image. So this is a face, which is that one. So we'll focus on that, preview. So the reflectivity is set to 0 at the moment, so it's not actually doing any shininess. So if we yonk that all the way up to 100, it goes super shiny. So we just want to change the value depending on how shiny we want that. Snowball, shininess, add image. Snowball shininess, preview. So it's now shiny. Don't want that too shiny. There we go. What was the other one? Neck, shininess, add image. Where's the neck? Shininess. And there it's gone shiny. So we want that to be double-sided as well. And the head itself, double-sided. But the face, that's fine. That doesn't need to be double-sided because we don't want to be seeing the other side of that if we're able to. So that is the project set up. Well, that's the completed project. Couple of spam project comments. So that's the completed project. So we've got both the female. Let's just save this. Save as Snowball M1. So this is the female. So it's exactly the same, but just for the female avatar. So how do we do that then? Those have been removed, so maybe we have to unassign, unassign, unassign. Preview. And then can we delete them? No, we can't. Because they're inherited assets. And we can't force delete them either. Because it sees them still as being in use. But anyway, so Snow BAWL M, save over the top of the other one. So that is the male version of Snowball. So if you're anti-Christmas, in the same way that you might be with Halloween and marshmallows, there is our Snowball head for the male avatar. So that's it. That's the project done. So we went from creating the female head first, using some sculpting just to do some basic detail sculpting for our normal map. And we also, oh actually there is one thing that we did miss. So to get the face, to get the normal map sorted out for the face, when we duplicated the face area, what we also did was sculpted, just did some very basic sculpting of the face to create a high, relatively speaking, high resolution version of the face decal that we used. So we created a decal that sits over the top of the head. Did a little bit of sculpting for that. And then baked the normal map Where is it now? So that's the high, number 2. And then we baked it to the face mask. And that creates the normal map for the face. But you don't necessarily need to do that. You could do the face and features and details as an image and then convert that using your favorite normal map conversion program. But that's what we did for the face. So it's exactly the same process as it was for the head, where we're sculpting the head. So we just did some very basic sculpting on the head just to get some interesting micro, just to get some interesting shapes, and then just bake that to a normal map. No need to go crazy with it. That was baked as a normal map, and then the end result is our head. So that's the project done. Right on about an hour. So we'll call it quits there, and we shall see you on the next stream. Not sure when that will be. I have to do these things when time allows. So thanks for lurking, lurkers. Thanks, Albert, for the question, and we shall see you on the next stream whenever that is. So bye for now.